She lived in a quiet town near the salt flats, a place where the wind carried dust, and the days passed without surprises. And on July 5th, 2088, the surprise came from the sky. The morning began with a thin silver line breaking the clouds, silent and bright, too smooth to be a plane, and too steady to be a falling star. People in the town looked up, shaded their eyes, and then went back to their lives, because the line vanished behind the low hills and nothing shook the ground. She kept watching. She was the kind of person who noticed small changes, how the birds paused, how the dogs turned their heads, how the power lines hummed a little higher than usual. By late afternoon, the heat pressed low, and she took the back road that cut through the dry scrub and old fence posts, a path she knew by memory. The air smelled like hot metal. Far ahead, a cloud of pale dust hung in a place where dust usually did not. She parked the truck and walked, slow and careful, not trying to be brave, just refusing to be blind. The hills hid a shallow basin where the ground turned to clay, and in the middle of that basin lay something that did not belong to Earth, not in the way she knew Earth. It was a craft the size of a small house, shaped like an almond, the skin not metal, but something that looked alive, shifting between gray and soft blue as if it breathed. No seams, no rivets, no open door, only a faint shimmer that ran from front to back like a ripple on a pond. Her heart beat fast and steady, like it did when a storm came in from the flats. She moved closer, hands open, showing she carried nothing. The air around the craft felt cooler, as if the thing pulled heat into itself. When she was close enough to see her reflection bend on its surface, the ripple paused, and a thin oval seam appeared, vertical, tall as a person. It opened without a sound. Inside, the light was low and even, like late afternoon light, but it had no source. A figure stood at the threshold, not stepping out, not retreating, just watching with the stillness of someone trained not to make sudden moves. He was taller than her by a head, lean, with the posture of a dancer or a pilot, shoulders loose, weight balanced. His suit was simple and close to the body. No hard armor, no weapons that she could see, made of the same shifting material as the craft. Gray that could be blue if the light asked for it. His face looked human. It was not exactly like a face from here, because the lines were too clean and the eyes held a depth that suggested long journeys, but it was close enough to make her chest relax. He raised both hands to shoulder height, palms out. The gesture was old and clear. "I come in peace." The wind carried a thin tremble through the dry grass. She knew that fear could turn people into a crowd, and a crowd could turn into trouble, and trouble could turn into harm. So she did not call anyone. She spoke first. Her voice came out softer than she expected. "You picked a quiet place," she said. He tilted his head, listening as if the words were objects he could turn in his hands. When he spoke, the sound was like her language stretched across a narrow bridge, each word careful. "Safe," he said. "Quiet is safe." She nodded. "Sometimes." He looked past her at the empty land, and then back at her. Something in his eyes, dark, steady, alert, told her he was measuring not the land, but the risk in her face. Visitors from the Three-Eye Atlas, had become a rumor over the past few years. A name spoken in news feeds and late-night calls, a program said to map worlds and learn without taking. The name itself came from a symbol on their first transmission. 3 bright circles joined at the center like a clover. People argued about what the circles meant. Some said mind, body, and spirit. Some said 3 sons of their home. He did not wear the symbol, but she felt the rumor standing in front of her. He took a breath and tried a longer sentence. "I am not where I should be." His accent turned the edges of the words to smooth stone. She understood. "You got separated," she said. "Lost." He glanced at the sky the way a sailor looks at tide lines. "Moved by wind," he said, then corrected himself. "Moved by field." She realized he meant a field, as in a force field, an invisible push or pull created by energy. A force field is like a net of power that changes how objects move without touching them, the way a magnet moves metal. He pointed to the west. Landing is not planned. She studied the craft. It showed no damage, but she trusted his voice more than the shine. "Are you hurt?" she asked. He took a moment, then shook his head once. No hurt, no food, no water. She had brought a metal bottle in her bag like she always did in the heat. She held it out with both hands, slow. He did not step back. He watched her fingers, watched her eyes, and after a breath, he reached. His hand was warm and dry, grip firm but not hard. He raised the bottle, smelled it first, then drank a little and stopped, as if he believed rationing was a form of respect. She smiled without meaning to. He noticed that too. And something in his face unlocked. A small shift in the muscles near the eyes that any person on Earth would call relief. The wind fell away for a heartbeat, and the basin grew so quiet she could hear the small clicks the craft made as its surface cooled. Far beyond the hills, a line of long shadows marked the road. She thought of the town, of faces that could turn curious and then angry, of hands that could lift phones and call men with badges. The safest choice would be to walk away and pretend she saw nothing. The truest choice, the one that matched the person she hoped to be, stood in front of her. "There's a barn," she said, pointing toward a path between the hills. "Old and empty. You can wait there until night. Fewer eyes at night." He looked at her hand, followed the line to the gap in the hills, and then back to her. Trust is a small bridge built one honest step at a time. He nodded. The oval doorway narrowed like a blink and sealed behind him, and the craft sank a little into the clay, as if going to sleep. He touched the hull with 2 fingers, and the surface rippled once, like a promise that it would be there when he returned. Then he stepped to her side, not too close, not too far, matching her pace as they began to walk. He moved with a careful grace, like a man used to lighter gravity who had learned, through long practice, how not to break the world under his feet. On the path, a lizard darted across their shadows and vanished. The sun slipped lower, turning the flats to copper. She told herself that she would lead him only as far as the barn, and that would be the end. But as they walked in the warm silence of dust and light, a thought settled in her chest that felt simple and true. The day had changed her life, and she had no wish to change it back. The next morning, the sky was pale and washed out, the kind of color that makes the land look endless. She woke before dawn, as she always did, and for a moment forgot that the night before had been real. But when she stepped outside and saw the faint trail of footprints leading toward the old barn, she knew it hadn't been a dream. The air was still cold, the kind of cold that bites at the edge of breath, and the ground glittered with dust. She followed the narrow path past the dried creek bed and the windmill that hadn't turned in years. The barn stood where it always had. Tired wood, roof half fallen, the smell of rust and old hay. But now there was something new inside. He was there, sitting on the floor near the broken wall, quiet and motionless. His suit had changed color with the light. What was gray-blue last night now looked almost silver. He heard her before he saw her. When he turned his head, the light from the doorway fell across his face, and she saw him clearly for the first time. He looked almost human, his skin a shade too even, his features balanced like a sculpture, his eyes dark and deep, reflecting more than they revealed. "You came back," he said, his voice calm, soft but not weak. The way he spoke her language surprised her. The rhythm was slow, careful, but no longer uncertain. "I said I would," she answered. "I brought food." She held out a small bag, nothing fancy, bread, fruit, and water. He stared at it as if it were a strange object. "I don't need much," he said, "but thank you." He spoke with a kind of politeness that didn't sound learned. It sounded natural, like kindness was his first instinct. She sat down across from him, close enough to talk, far enough not to scare him. "What are you doing here?" she asked finally. He looked at his hands for a long time before answering. Observation, study. We come to learn, not to take. She nodded slowly. Like scientists. He tilted his head. Yes, but not only science. We learn behavior, emotion, life. We try to understand how it feels to be. The way he said that last word, to be, made her chest tighten. Don't you already know how it feels to live? She asked. He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that only reaches the eyes. We exist, but that is not the same as living. She wanted to ask more, but he looked tired, as if each word carried weight. His gaze drifted toward the open door, where sunlight spilled across the floor. Your world is loud, he said quietly. Even when it sleeps, it makes sound. Machines, wind, heartbeats. It is full. You hear everything, she said. Yes, he nodded. Sometimes too much. She realized then that his senses must be sharper than hers, maybe painfully so. He noticed her silence, then added, The first time I came here, I didn't understand fear. Now I do. It is a heavy thing. She looked at him, trying to imagine what kind of life he had before, what kind of place raised someone so gentle, yet so haunted. You shouldn't stay here, she said. People will see you. I know, he answered, but I can't go yet. The storm last night broke my signal. They will come for me when it clears. And if they don't? He didn't look at her. Then I'll stay lost. The simplicity of that answer frightened her. The silence stretched until he spoke again, his tone softer. You are not afraid of me. It wasn't a question. Should I be? She asked. He shook his head. No. There was honesty in that word, solid and calm. You shouldn't. The sun climbed higher, and the light filled the barn with gold dust. She studied his face again, searching for something alien, something wrong, but found none. He looked too human, almost painfully human. Only his eyes betrayed him, eyes that carried distance, like he had seen too much. She wanted to understand him. What's your name? She asked. He hesitated. Names don't mean what you think they do where I'm from. We use tones, a sound that matches our energy. It cannot be spoken here. Then what should I call you? He thought for a long time. Call me whatever means peace in your language. She smiled faintly. Then I'll call you Pax. He seemed to like that. Pax, he repeated, testing the sound, the way a child repeats a new word. Yes, that's good. For a while they said nothing. A bird flew in through a hole in the roof, landed near them, then flew out again. She realized she wasn't nervous anymore. Whatever he was, she didn't feel danger. She felt something else, a strange calm, as if his presence slowed time. He reached into a small compartment on his wrist and pulled out a tiny sphere no bigger than a marble. It floated above his palm, glowing faint blue. Memory Keeper, he explained. It records moments, not sound or image, but feeling. Emotion leaves a trace that we can hold. He let it hover between them. Now it records peace. She stared at the small light, mesmerized. That's beautiful, she said. It's simple, he replied. Everything we build tries to remember how to feel. Your kind does it with words. We do it with light. She smiled at that. Maybe we're not so different. Maybe not, he said. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of rain from far away. He looked toward the horizon. When they come for me, he said quietly, I will have to leave quickly. They don't let us form attachments. She felt a sudden sting in her chest. And what are we doing now? She asked, voice almost a whisper. He didn't answer. But the look in his eyes told her he understood the question, even if he couldn't say it out loud. In that moment, in the golden light of a dying afternoon, surrounded by dust and silence, she realized something impossible was happening. She wasn't afraid of him because she already felt connected to him, and she could see it. He felt it too. Two strangers from different worlds, drawn together not by logic, but by something older and simpler, something that didn't need a name. The following days passed like quiet storms, small and steady, filled with tension that neither of them dared to name. The townspeople didn't notice much. They rarely did. But she stopped sleeping properly. Always half awake, always listening for footsteps or drones in the distance. Pax stayed hidden in the barn, fixing parts of his suit, gathering fragments of metal from the field. She brought him food, water, clothes that no longer smelled of machines. Every visit lasted longer than the one before. At first, they spoke, cautiously, as if each word could break the strange peace between them. But soon, the caution turned into curiosity. She told him about the town, the noise of markets, the smell of bread in the mornings, the way people fought and forgave so easily. He listened as though he were memorizing every syllable. When he spoke, she realized he was learning emotion through language. He would pause and ask what certain words meant. Lonely, hope, regret. Each time she tried to explain, and each time he looked at her with those calm, deep eyes that made her forget how to breathe. He told her that on the Three-Eye Atlas, emotion was studied, not lived. They believed feelings made decisions weak and slow. "We are taught to observe, not to feel," he said once, watching the sunlight move across the barn wall. "But when I look at you, I don't want to observe. I just want to stay." She didn't answer right away. The air felt too thick, and her hands trembled slightly. She knew this was dangerous, not because of what he might do, but because of what she was starting to feel. Love was simple to understand in books, easy to name when it belonged to others. But in that barn, between silence and starlight, love was something wild and alive, something she couldn't hide behind logic. She began to notice small things, how he tilted his head when trying to understand humor, how his voice softened when he said her name, how he touched the old radio one night and smiled when the static hummed back. "It sounds like wind trapped inside," he said. "It's music," she told him. "It's supposed to make people feel." He closed his eyes, listening carefully. "Then I feel," he whispered. They both laughed, and for a moment, the fear left the room. But feelings weren't safe. One evening, as the sun burned red and low, Pax told her something that made her blood run cold. "They will come soon," he said quietly. "The signal is fixed. My team knows where I am." "That's good, isn't it?" she asked. But the way he looked at her gave the answer before he spoke. "No. They will not allow this. They will not understand what I have learned here. Emotion is forbidden. They will erase it." She didn't understand. "Erase?" "In my mind," he said, "they can remove memory traces, take away feelings that break protocol." Her chest tightened. "They'd take me away from you?" "Not you," he said softly. "Just what I feel about you." The words fell between them like a wound. For a long time neither spoke. She tried to imagine what kind of world punished love, what kind of progress demanded emptiness. "Then don't go," she said at last. "Hide until they leave." He shook his head slowly. "They always find their own." He stood up and walked to the barn door, looking at the horizon where the stars would rise. "When I first saw this planet," he said, "I thought it was broken. So much chaos, so much pain. But now I see why you stay. There's beauty in the noise." She stepped closer. "Then stay in it with me." He turned, eyes full of light that wasn't entirely human. "You don't understand what that means for me." "Then explain," she said, her voice almost breaking. He looked at her, long and silent, as if memorizing her face. "It means I would stop being who I was made to be. It means I would choose you over everything I know." She didn't hesitate. "Then choose." Her words were simple, but they carried every heartbeat she had left. He stepped closer, close enough for her to feel the faint warmth that came from him, something softer than human heat, like light turned into touch. He raised a hand, hesitated, then brushed her hair from her face with trembling fingers. "On the 3-Eye Atlas," he said quietly, "we don't have a word for this, but I think I know now what love means." The world around them felt suspended. The sound of the wind, the dust floating in the last ray of sun, the small breath she took before closing her eyes. He leaned in and kissed her, gently, as if afraid the world would break if he pressed too hard. And maybe it did break, in that quiet way things do when they can never go back to what they were. When he pulled away, his eyes were wet, and she realized that even if he left tomorrow, nothing they had felt could be erased completely. Because love, once known, can't be unlearned. Not by human hands, not by machines, not even by the cold silence of space. That night, the air felt heavier, as if the earth itself knew something was about to end. The stars were sharp above. The horizon and the wind carried the faint hum of engines, machines that didn't belong to this world. She and Pax stood at the edge of the field where his ship had first fallen weeks ago. The craft had awakened, glowing faint blue under the sand, its surface rippling with life again. It was waiting for him, calling him home. "They're here," he said quietly, eyes lifted to the dark sky. "I can feel the field moving." She didn't see anything yet, only the stars trembling slightly, but his face told her he was right. Her heart began to race. "You don't have to go," she whispered. "You can stay hidden." He shook his head. "If I stay, they'll search. They'll see this place. They'll hurt others to find me. I can't bring that here." She wanted to argue, to scream that it didn't matter, but she saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't just choosing for himself. He was protecting her. The blue light from the ship spread wider, painting the field with cold color. His suit began to glow faintly, responding to it. "They'll erase everything," he said, his voice barely more than a breath. "They'll see what I've learned and they'll take it away. That's how they keep us loyal." "You can't let them," she said, tears building. "They can't erase love." Pax stepped closer, his hand trembling as he reached for hers. "Maybe not from me," he said softly, "but from memory. Yes. Once they touch my mind, I'll forget how it felt to meet you." She shook her head, refusing the thought. "Then don't let them touch you." "If I don't return," he said, "they'll destroy me." He smiled faintly, but the smile hurt to watch. "They don't understand that I've already changed. Even if they take the memories, I'll still carry something of this inside me, like a shadow that never fades." The sound above grew louder now, soft at first, then pulsing. A rhythm that came from no airplane, no drone. A beam of pale light broke through the clouds, reaching toward the field. Pax looked at it, then at her. "They've found me," she grabbed his arm. "Then run." He didn't move. "They'll find me wherever I go." Then let me go with you." The words came out before she could stop them. His eyes widened, full of something between awe and sorrow. "You don't know what you're asking." "I don't care," she said. "I'd rather go and remember you than stay and wonder what could have been." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The beam brightened, washing the world in silver. Pax raised a hand and touched her cheek gently, tracing the path of a tear. "If there were another world where this was allowed," he said softly, "I would take you there." "Then take me anyway," she whispered. His expression broke, half grief, half wonder, and he leaned forward, resting his forehead against hers. The hum of the ship deepened, the ground vibrating under their feet. The light around him grew stronger until it wrapped them both in a soft glow. "Close your eyes," he said. She did. The air thickened, filled with warmth and static. For a second she thought he might truly take her with him, but then the heat vanished. When she opened her eyes, he was gone. The field was empty, the night quiet again. Only a faint shimmer lingered where he had stood, fading slowly into the ground like mist. She dropped to her knees, the silence pressing against her chest. Above her, the sky was still trembling, streaks of silver disappearing into the darkness. She stayed there for a long time, until the wind cooled her tears. Days passed. The world returned to its rhythm. The town unchanged, the people unaware that something extraordinary had happened among them. She went back to work, to her routines, but at night she walked to the field and stood where the light had touched her skin. Sometimes, when the wind was still, she swore she could hear a faint hum beneath the earth, like a heartbeat too deep to die. One evening, months later, as the sun set in soft gold, she noticed something half buried in the sand. A small sphere, smooth and silver, no bigger than a marble. When she picked it up, it glowed faint blue in her palm. She knew what it was, his memory keeper. She held it tightly, afraid it might vanish, and for a moment she felt warmth travel through her fingers, a quiet pulse that wasn't her own. She didn't see images or hear words. She only felt it, peace, longing, love. The emotions were so clear, so human. The tears filled her eyes. He had kept his promise. They had taken his memories, but not his feelings. Somehow, some part of him had found a way to send them back to her. She lifted the tiny sphere toward the fading light, and it glowed brighter, reflecting the sky above. In that glow, she felt him there, not as a shadow or ghost, but as something real, something alive between stars and hearts. And in that moment, she understood what he meant when he said emotion was forbidden. It wasn't because it made them weak. It was because love, once awakened, could never be erased.